Hello, everyone. This is Paula. This is the Common Book Show. We have a cast of thousands today. We have Richard and Sal and Greg and the mystery guest, and of course James is there in the cloud, and Tom, my son, on drums. So we're about to get started. I brought my book today to talk about because I was fascinated while reading this book. It is Jane Austen, Mansfield Park, and this was written over 200 years ago, and the roles of women were so rigid, and I was telling the mystery guest that there was a faux pas where there was a young girl who was not out. What they mean by out is she hasn't been introduced to society yet. But she didn't have on the traditional bonnet of the young woman who was not out yet. So he spent a great deal of time talking to her, thinking she had been introduced to society already, and apparently he made a big mistake, and he's not welcome back to this house anymore because he talked to the younger girl and ignored the older sister who was out. And I'm thinking, what a weird world where everybody's roles are so rigid and ingrained that you can't. There's no variation on theme. Everyone does exactly the same thing. And we were talking about clothing. Sal was talking about clothing. Some of these clothes, the corsets and so forth, were so tight that you couldn't move, that your in fact, it was not on, there was a surgery that you could get that removed your bottom two ribs so that when you put your corset on, your waist would cinch in. Because and I know this from other things, not from this book, but the fashionable waist in the 19th century was 18 inches, which is about yay big. So the things that women have gone through for fashion are
Foot binding.
foot
Foot
binding.
binding, right?
Oh, God.
Yeah, they couldn't.
That's an example.
They couldn't walk. They had to be carried everywhere they went.
Yeah.
Now, would you consider these to be acts of aggression against women?
Well, I suppose you could think of it that way, but I think really they were perpetrated on women by the fashion industry. It was what was fashionable and what was considered beautiful. In China, for many hundreds of years, tiny feet, and it just got so to the point where they weren't all women weren't doing this. They were just the wealthy women who could afford someone to pay someone to carry them around. It wasn't everybody. But I don't know that I would call it an act of aggression, a male aggression against women. I think it was just taking fashion to a ridiculous point. And there's a lot of these things that I've read about in the past, and I mean things like where a bustle is a fake butt. You put it on the back of you, and it makes your butt look like a big butt, and that was just a fashion that everyone wore this thing. Well, now of course we have big butts that are in fashion. Where was I as a young person when big butts were in fashion? That's what I need to know. That is my.
I like big butts and I cannot lie. Anyway.
So anyway, I just find it fascinating to read something that is over 200 years old, and I wonder. I like to project forward and wonder in another 200 years where we're going to be, and are people going to think the same thing of us at this time, like we're so backward or provincial, or how could it get any freer? Do you know what I mean? Can you even think of how? I mean, everybody walking around naked. What are we gonna? What's gonna make it freer? I don't understand.
That would be cool.
I don't know.
Or are
about
there
that.
cycles of freedom and repression that kind of repeat
Oh, yeah.
themselves cyclically, over
I
time?
I
Right?
think that is true. That and then we're heading back into another
Repressive
repressive
era.
era, but
James wouldn't mind that, would you, James?
All I know is thanks to body painting, we already have people walking around naked.
well, it's not illegal for women to walk around without tops on in New York State.
Yeah, but do you ever see anyone doing it?
At beaches, occasionally you'll see somebody.
Even at the grocery store?
Beaches.
But no, but
Yeah, it's
is
legal.
It is legal.
It's
yeah.
legal anywhere in New York State to
Okay,
walk
I did
for
not
a
know
woman
that.
to walk around without a shirt on, without anything on the top.
Yeah. It's interesting how nudity is illegal. I just find that interesting.
A friend of
It's-
mine
Yeah.
did it.
It's an
does it once in a
intriguing.
while.
I understand the reasons, but I find that fascinating on multiple
Well,
levels.
I had a cousin. I had a cousin. She's deceased. She was actually my mother's cousin. This woman was not a looker, okay, and her husband was even less of a looker than she was. They were nudists.
Yeah.
They used to go to these nudist colonies,
Mm-hmm.
and they'd prance around naked in front of everybody and
Harming no one.
harming no one. But the thing is, I can't imagine.
I saw someone
go.
doing that at the Music is Arts Festival, actually.
Yeah, they when we lived in Tempe in Arizona, there was a girl. Do you remember when we were it was a Halloween celebration? There was a girl walking around with no shirt on and just something painted
Yeah, I remember.
on the front. It was like, wow, yeah, that was pretty wild.
Greg, do you remember that incident with fondness?
Yeah. It was fun. It was funny and sexy.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
We
It
had a
was
big laugh
interesting.
about it.
I like looking. I mean, I don't. I like to look at naked people. I just don't want to be naked myself. I find naked people tremendously interesting. That when I
Spencer Tunick.
when I volunteered for that Spencer Tunick photography thing at the
The old train
station.
depot, yeah.
Yeah. I didn't take my clothes off. I had volunteered handing out whatever, and I got to watch it. It was very interesting.
Did you feel more naked clothed around all those naked
not at
people?
all.
You know what I mean?
I'd never seen that. I'd never. I mean, you rarely see one naked person, let alone
10,000
16.
or
I don't know.
whatever,
I think it was
however many there were.
1,600 or something.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was there off to the side with my clothes on.
That's
and-
actually it? That's the
yeah.
image?
That's one of the images. I have an actual image they gave me because I volunteered, but I got to see some people I know naked. It was fascinating. It was really.
Where is this?
It was at the Central Terminal.
See, this artist is a photographer who photographs large groups, but his shtick is he photographs large groups of naked people.
Well-
So he came to Buffalo and he said, "I want to get as many naked people show up at the Central Terminal, and I'm going to photograph them."
And he got that many people to show up, huh?
Show up, yeah, and take their clothes off. And I have to say, the one thing that really impressed me about it, first of all, no, there were two things. One was everybody's body is different.
Right.
You never get to see imperfect bodies naked. If you're going to see a naked body, it's a perfect body,
Right.
because it's either an art, it's a photography,
Fashion or something like
or
that, or
fashion, and sometimes they're even
Movies or whatever.
manipulated.
Yeah.
Yeah, movies. You always see idealized bodies. You never see real bodies. Well, there's some real variation on the theme here. I got to tell you, the variation on the theme was amazing. There were people with all different shapes of everything, and there were women who had mastectomies, so there were all kinds of things to see and to look at. And I thought, for the rest of my life, because the only other thing I'd ever seen that was a huge group of people like that naked were the pictures of the Holocaust.
I was just going to, that came into my mind.
Yeah.
Just before you said that.
The pictures of the Holocaust, and those are horrifying pictures. And now, instead of feeling like that image is wiped out of my mind, the Holocaust image replaced by the joyful image of all these naked people. And just for that, I think that was a really good reason for me to go there and be a voyeur.
What about
Which
age
is all it
range?
was. Everybody from, well, I
I mean,
think
obviously not children.
not children.
but,
I would
yeah.
say 18
All
to
the way
18
up.
to 80.
Mm.
So there were very old people there walking with canes and naked.
Wow.
James, if this happens again, I think we should go investigate.
It was one. Well, you had to have
You
an
had to be a reason,
and-
have a reason to be there.
Yeah, it
vo-
was through the art gallery that I was volunteering.
Voyeurism is not a sufficient reason to participate. That's not going to get you a ticket in.
Well, it's like she said, it must have been fascinating.
It was fascinating. I'm glad I had that opportunity.
Sal, get naked. They'll let you in.
What?
That's what you got to do.
Yeah, if you get naked, you can go.
So our friend Caroline Fulkerson went to that.
I know. I saw her.
And she said the experience, not of being photographed, but of the conversations, was more interesting than in the event than being photographed.
Yeah.
She said people would say, "Oh, did you see so and so?" And you're referring to their body.
Yeah.
Like details, or just did
Yeah,
you see that
yeah.
they were, that,
Yeah.
you know, the
Well, she
person
wa-
you know?
She was with the women.
Oh.
And the women were commenting on the bodies of the various men who
Wow.
they only knew in a closed state, and now they were seeing them
Well,
in a naked state, and they were.
I saw her. I saw Russell. Remember Russell, the guy that when we filmed at the.
Oh, the guy who bought the
Yeah.
Central Terminal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Russell at the last minute decided to join them, so he just whipped off his clothes and ran into the crowd.
Uh-huh.
And oh God, I can't remember several other people that I know I saw, and it just seemed so normal at the time because there were so many naked people there. But I couldn't, honestly, I could not do that myself. I couldn't. My
So you have limits.
we got a lot of limits.
I
I'm
think
really
everyone
hung
does.
up. I'm very hung up. Well, you did that nude scene almost totally nude when in your retrospective when you woman
Guilty in castration
guilty in
bid. Yeah.
castration bid.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But I think it's interesting that everybody has limits.
Yeah, yeah.
I think the limits are the definition of your ego. You define yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You say everything outside of that is something that's not me.
Yeah.
But everyone's limits are different.
But
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I think about these people as being very brave. I think about myself as just being a big chicken. That's why I couldn't do it. I think of myself in some way as the other of who is not brave, So these people, especially women who had mastectomies and men who had some kind of testicular issues, they just did it, and they didn't care, and they just were there, and that to me was the essence of bravery, So that's
Well, keep in mind, Paula, that people who do movies get paid in advance, plus a personal trainer, personal chef, and
Oh, yeah.
6 months. 6 months to prepare for that
Of
movie.
course they do, but that's why this was so interesting because these people had obviously not prepared. They were normal. They were normal in every way, so it was so joyful to see all these normal bodies just there. That I found that remarkable, but
No one was prancing.
they weren't really. I mean, even the people who were a little mincing steps, they weren't exactly doing striding into the room. They still did it.
How did this start? Where did they get naked outside or inside, or how did the process
inside,
go?
I can't. There was a place for them to keep their belongings, and I don't remember exactly how that worked. But they had a section on the side where you just put your stuff, and then just you walked into the facility.
Already nude.
Already
Yeah, I
nude.
see.
So when this happened, you were oblivious. You didn't even know it was taking place.
I knew about it afterwards because I remember Paula telling
When
me
did
about
this
it, but
happen?
Oh, Jesus.
Say in the 90s,
It was
yeah.
in the 90s.
Oh, well, that explains it.
Yeah.
But if you had any connection to the art community, you knew about it, you know. But
Well,
that's
the-
why I was asking Sanford,
Yeah.
because it's possible a lot of people didn't even know what was going on.
No.
Yeah, I'm sure they didn't. I'm sure there would be people, Christians picketing outside or something if they,
Interesting.
You know, if it was too widespread, you know. It just seems to me that it would be something that they'd be against.
Well, when I went to college in the mid '90s, some people who hung out in the club that I hung out with, they were getting paid $15 an hour to pose nude in front of art classes.
Oh yeah, and that's normal
yeah.
too. I've got friends who've done that, and
some people are just very comfortable with their bodies and they're okay with it. You know, I know people who've done that as well, and or strippers. Think about that.
Yeah.
That's a profession that
yeah,
you know requires a certain comfort level with
Yeah.
how you look.
of course,
You know, and that. So
yeah. It was interesting, but yeah. But those art classes, I know a lot of older people, younger people, that did that on a regular basis at Buff State.
Mhm.
But anyway, so let's move on to your list, Richard.
Oh, I want to mention something. Today is the last day of the Cannes Film Festival. They're going to choose the best movie. And for the whole week, every day, there's news about what's going on at the Cannes Film Festival. It started out with the Johnny Depp movie, so Johnny Depp was there. 8-minute standing ovation. Were they applauding him in the movie or the fact that he made it through the trial? So on YouTube, there's a lot of discussion going on about this right now. The most interesting thing is when I heard today, okay? He gets the 8-minute standing ovation, all right?
Yeah.
And Amber Heard says, wow, he gets an 8-minute standing ovation, and I've already received 100 death threats.
Oh, Jesus.
You find that outlandish, Mr. Walker?
Yes, she's just trying to glom on him for more attention. Just go away now.
Yeah, I don't know how.
Tom, I can't hear James.
Yeah, I
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know how. I mean, they both didn't look great during that whole trial thing. But I have to agree with James on this one. I don't. I have a feeling she has very low character. You know.
Well, let me ask you this. Did she deserve 100 death threats?
No, but I think that people who are rabid fans of any star are, besides, it's all this internet stuff. It's all anonymous, right? Nobody's really doing it in person. They're not going to her door and saying, I want to kill you. You know, it's all. Oh, you're turning him up? Okay. Yeah, I think that, I mean, maybe it's possible she received, 100 death threats, but I wish that, I don't know. I'm judgmental about this. I think that she's kind of a crazy woman.
Well, I mean, anyone who's in the public eye for any length of time can receive death threats. I mean, I've received 1 or 2 death threats, and I'm, just a local guy. And Bill Wheaton, when he was here in town, when he was Wesley Crusher on Star Trek, we were getting death threats about him, and we had to surround him with a wall of flesh everywhere he walked. So, and why? Because people didn't like his character? I mean, come on. That's ridiculous.
Well, that is true. Any time you're in the public, that people like that. People who just do these TED Talks, if people don't like their TED Talks, they end up getting death threats. It's like
What's a TED Talk?
It's a talk that has to do with science, technology.
Oh, tech
No,
talk.
no, not a tech talk.
For some reason, it's TED. I'm sure each letter stands for something.
Yeah, I'm not
Oh,
sure
okay.
where that acronym comes from, but
Yeah,
Mr. Walker, what does that
Yeah.
stand for, the TED?
Actually, I never looked it up myself.
yeah. So I mean, I've seen TED talks where they talk about their last TED talk and how they got death threats. You know, so, and they're not exactly controversial issues. You know, but people are just, this whole anonymity with the internet has made people bold in a really radical way.
technology, entertainment, and design.
Ah,
Oh, there
That's
you go.
where it comes from.
Thank you, mystery guest.
Hmm.
so anyway, mystery guest, what are you reading?
Well, I've been very, very busy with my professional life lately, and reading has kind of taken a back seat. Although I have been rereading a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. And the idea is that we often try to eliminate habits or start new ones, and we go about it in the wrong way. We go about it focusing on the result instead of our identity, the kind of a human being that we want to be, right? And one of the principles in the book is reverse your motivation. It should be intrinsic. Instead of, I want to lose 50 pounds, I want to be a person who has more discipline. I want to be a person who's, that I can be proud
Right.
of, that I've stuck with something, right? That kind of thinking. And another thing I really think is great about atomic habits, little tiny decisions that you make every day over a course of 5 years can transform your entire life. And they don't necessarily have to be big things. And oftentimes, we look at somebody who's become successful and they think overnight success. What you don't see is the little decisions
Yeah.
that they make every day that aren't big. And those things are the most dramatic. And I found that really compelling.
Yeah.
So I think it's really worth reading.
Yeah, I find that when I'm reading books like that, I do tend to change while I'm reading them,
Yeah.
and then I go. But
you lose the motivation, right?
what,
That happens to me
from
sometimes.
what this person is saying, this James Clear,
Yeah,
I've got it
yeah.
on the, yes, last week, was it last week or the week before, or several weeks in a row that Greg was talking about how I go ballistic at home.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started paying attention to what makes me get like that when I do it. So I started doing a little bit of cognitive behavioral therapy
Right.
on myself.
That's what that is. Yeah.
So, I found just today, I made myself some lunch, and I tried to take all of it at the same time because there was a drink, there was some rice, and there was some salad, and I tried to take all of it at the same time. And of course, it was too much, and I ended up spilling my drink
Oh,
into my
jeez.
rice, and I wanted to. I
Just
was ready
leave-
to
go off,
lose it,
yeah.
and I thought, okay, so what made me get there? And I said, well, it was because you didn't want to take the extra step. It was like a laziness or overconfidence that I could do this. I mean, it was just a simple thing, but that's what. And I've been doing that for the last 3 or 4 days, trying to examine what it is that's making me get to that point. And it's always because I'm trying to take a shortcut.
And now you're aware.
Yeah,
of
I'm
that.
trying
It's
to
just
take
being
a
aware
shortcut,
of it.
and,
Yeah.
and then I get mad at myself. I'm never yelling at Greg. I'm always yelling at myself, but still, it's disconcerting.
And it's stressful,
Yeah,
which isn't
well, it's
good for you.
It's not.
Yeah.
Good. It's disconcerting for the people in the house
Yeah.
because you hear somebody yell "fuck" at the
Yeah.
top of their lungs from the other room, and you think, something must have happened. They must have chopped their own hand off or something. Instead, it's something simple that.
Just play the tape back and
Yeah.
you see what you could have done
So yeah,
differently.
so now that book I
Okay.
think is probably talking about looking at those.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah,
Ver-
and-
One other thing that I did that was, it's not that I read, but I attended a play by accident, not by accident, but I was invited to this thing unexpectedly. there's a performing arts group called Young Ladies of Grace in Williamsville, which
Uh-huh.
is just extraordinary. And I met the teacher there. Her name is Angela. I don't know her last name. And she mentors these young women, some of whom are 10, 12 years old, others in their early 20s. And it's a performing arts school. And they put on this play about a 12-year-old girl dying of brain cancer. She dies.
Wow.
It's grim, really intense. And it was like 40 minutes, 35 minutes in length. And it was, I celebrated and applauded, and I thought it was so commendable that these young ladies tackled something that was so emotionally challenging and difficult,
Yeah.
and they carried it off. The young girl was 12 years old. You know,
Is is it in any way religious?
not at all.
Because the name
Not-
leads you to believe that.
That was
yeah.
that's what I thought, because I knew nothing about
Yeah.
this group and nothing at all. I think the idea of grace is carrying yourself with grace,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
And having some self-respect.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of meanings for it.
And-
Just usually used for religion.
And talking to that teacher, I got the sense that she's a real mentor for these kids, and I was just very
And
impressed.
it's in Williamsville.
It's in Williamsville, and I think it was
Huh.
a one-day only thing. They gave 2 performances
Wow.
that day, and again, I expected it. First of all, I didn't expect to be just blindsided with such a powerfully emotional story.
Yeah.
And I didn't expect. I'm giving this away, but who's going to see it now? It's over. I didn't expect her to die. I mean,
Yeah.
it didn't end well, and it showed how these family members and friends of this young girl were brought together through her death, and they weren't necessarily close in some ways. You know, there was a lot of dysfunction in these relationships.
Yeah.
And it showed how that death brought them together and you know, made them reconsider and reevaluate what's important.
Well,
and
that-
it sounds trite, but it wasn't
No,
at
no,
all.
it doesn't sound trite.
It was really powerful.
It's talking about human relationships. I mean, there's
And-
nothing trite about that,
Yeah.
really. But that's interesting. Okay, the Young Ladies of Grace. It is.
So it is Christian performing.
Performing
I didn't
Arts
get that
Academy,
sense at
done
all. Yeah.
with confidence, self-esteem, praise, and respect. Well, I mean, I guess whatever their affiliation is, that's not important. And it wasn't. You didn't feel like you were being bludgeoned.
There was no mention of God or Christ or
Yeah.
religion or anything. Well, actually, there was a moment where somebody said, "How could there be a God
Yeah.
if you know
Right.
this can happen to a child?" But
Yeah.
it wasn't a preachy
Right.
thing.
Really. Yeah.
It was a question that I think anybody could ask. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So, what book do you have on your lap there, Greg?
Christgau, 90s.
Your Christgau book? Is that what you've been reading lately, or is there something else you want to talk about that you've been reading?
I've been reading about the Tar movie. I read an interview with
in the book, in the magazine, rather.
yeah, with Todd Field. He played Nick Nightingale in Eyes Wide Shut,
Yeah.
and now he's made 3 movies, including Tar and In the Bedroom and Little Children. And guys, I think he's really fantastic. So I've been reading about that, how interesting it is, and how Kate Blanchett is.
She was amazing in that movie.
She's a great actor, and how it's one of those Me Too movement things, but it's a lesbian famous person.
Yeah. Did you see that movie, Richard? Tar?
I
Yeah?
did. I did.
Did you like it?
Yeah. What impressed me about the movie is the politics that takes place in
Oh.
a symphony orchestra.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Like, how much power does the first violinist have?
Yeah.
And the reason that interested me is because I went in the 1980s when I was going to UB a lot, like constantly,
Yeah.
taking classes.
Uh-huh.
One of my classes was an art class, and this woman next to me liked me for some reason. You know, she was like, she really wanted to be friends with me.
Yeah.
She was the wife of the first violinist at the Buffalo Philharmonic.
Oh.
And she was telling me things like these little squabbles that take place.
Yeah.
You know, and all that came to the fore when I saw this movie.
Uh-huh. It
You know,
made
those
sense.
memories, yeah. Like, she told me a lot about Michael Tilson Thomas and what a pervert he was. He was
Oh,
the director at the
I had
time,
no idea he was a pervert.
and now he's in San Francisco. You know,
Being
he's
a pervert.
He's this great conductor, world renowned. You know.
Yeah, it's interesting. My only growing up where I did, in the kind of, blue collar environment that I did, there was really no, I mean, although Gloria did too, but her father was really into opera. So she heard a lot of classical music in her house, where I didn't. The only classical music I ever heard was when they used it to, on cartoons. And
Yeah.
and the first time I saw the Philharmonic, when it was the young people's concert, and I was fascinated because I said, "Oh, this is cartoon music." that was my only frame of reference. I loved it. It's cartoon music. I could see the cat being chased by the mouse being chased by the cat, and the whole thing. I knew these songs,
Yeah.
but I've gotten a little bit more into it as I've gotten older, but I still don't. I took a music appreciation class with this guy, this Professor Strangehams
Yeah.
at University of Buffalo, and he was very aptly named. He was a very unusual man. He was very angry about everybody and how little they paid attention to things, and
Push your mic away.
so I didn't learn a lot because they wanted us to learn how to read music in this class, and I didn't know how to play an instrument. So it was like learning Chinese without understanding it. But I did. How I managed to pass the class because I was already friends with Kenny, and Kenny had a classical music background, so he used to help me with my assignments because I didn't know what the hell was going on in that class.
There's an interesting scene in that movie, and maybe you can refresh my memory as to what happens in this scene. It's like a 9-minute take where they didn't do any edits. Kate Blanchett,
Yeah.
being a famous conductor, is asked to teach at Juilliard. So she teaches a class of aspiring conductors. And then I believe she's giving a lecture on separating the music from the individual, like the biography of so-and-so versus the music of so-and-so. And she calls up a student and says, "Would you like to play something that you've written?" And he goes and sits down at the piano. She says, "But first I want to ask you some questions." And she asks the students questions about their life. And she makes judgmental comments on the student's life. Do I have it right so far?
From what I remember.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then she says, she turns to the, and then he plays his piece, and then she turns to the other students and says, "Did my evaluation of his personal life affect how you saw the music?" See,
Yeah.
so she's making a point. But that student reported her for the fact that she was mean to him.
Right.
And that haunts her throughout the movie,
Yeah.
that she was mean to her students.
Yeah, well, she was trying to make a point, but without taking his feelings into consideration.
So you think it was justified?
I don't know if I think it's justified, but I think she thought it was justified.
Well, I think that's almost like a discussion point in the
Yeah,
movie,
yeah.
is how far can teachers go to teach?
Well, it's
Like
just verbal.
Like the
it was
Whiplash
verbal.
movie. Remember that movie?
Right.
That teacher
Yeah, but he
was
but he
very
did physical
abusive.
stuff though.
He was very abusive.
She
Yeah,
did,
there's
she
no
didn't do anything.
justification.
She just was mean verbally.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
intimidating verbally.
No.
She didn't touch him.
But it turns out she had a rough way coming up. She was very dishonest about her own background. And it turns out that she came from a much humbler background than she let on. So,
Dead Island.
yeah.
One thing about teaching is if you want results from your students, you have to be a very delicate psychiatrist, but sometimes you have to be as ruthless as a bulldozer. And you have to know how to balance those two things in a way that there's humanity in the relationship. and that's a very hard thing to do. It's a tightrope to walk.
Yeah, especially at that
Yeah,
age,
at
because
that-
they're
yeah.
very sensitive.
That's right.
And they're very hypercritical of each other. So if they say something, and that could backfire.
That's
really.
right.
Yeah.
You know what you were saying before, because I didn't see the movie, about how a lot of them, I don't know about Michael Tilson Thomas, but I know a lot of the conductors, men mostly, historically, right?
Yeah.
Were
Yes.
very ruthless, and they were womanizers. And Toscanini famously once said, and I'm not trying to be offensive, he once grabbed a soprano by the breasts in front of the orchestra, and he said, "If only these were brains." Can you imagine something like that?
Oh, yeah.
Just but I mean, it's just astonishing to me, especially in today's environment.
Oh,
that
yeah.
that was commonplace and accepted.
Yeah. Right. And now
Yeah.
things have changed.
Yeah.
But
Hopefully.
yeah.
Oh, that ties into that cartoon that we were discussing, James.
Okay.
Oh, no, that's not the cartoon. It's a different one. I sent it to James, and I said, "Do you think we should discuss this on the show?" Do you remember that, James?
I do.
Okay, you think it's a good time to bring it up?
Why not? I'll bring it up anyway.
But-
We're,
I will love it.
Okay, so here's the cartoon. I have to make it bigger.
oh.
I'm starting to miss toxic masculinity.
Yeah, and that is, I mean, that's a joke. It's not, I don't think that,
So is the cartoonist saying that the cartoonist perceives that this is starting to emerge amongst women?
I don't think any women will ever miss toxic masculinity. Of course, I think that there are, women, there are different, women and men are different.
Well, the reason I thought it might be a trend in society is because there's a YouTube channel called Modern Day Debates.
Yeah.
One of the debates they had this week was, have men become wimps?
And I think that's what that's what I read in that
Yeah.
cartoon,
Hey.
that men have become emasculated.
Well, this guy, this
and-
guy in particular,
Yeah.
he's got the man bun,
Right.
The,
I think masculinity, and there's nothing wrong with being masculine. There's being toxic masculinity is appalling.
Yeah.
But masculinity is
Yeah.
something that I think is healthy and should be admired and celebrated and nurtured and
Right.
and developed.
And
So I think they're
and
saying that, geez,
the other, right.
that's lost.
And
now,
how do you,
and
how do
maybe-
you, right,
Yeah.
how does a person define masculinity?
Well, that's a great question.
And that is, masculine men, there's nothing wrong with being masculine. It's just that when you take it to the degree where, women become less than human, then
Yeah,
it's
obviously,
toxic
it is, yeah.
masculinity.
Yes, please define toxic masculinity.
I was just going to say that.
Well, I will tell you what my definition is. I think that if a man is abusive, okay, what movie was I watching? Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore.
There's a good example.
that's-
Harvey Keitel.
Not only Harvey Keitel, but the one she ends up with,
Chris
Chris
Christopherson.
Christopherson,
right.
smacks her son,
Yeah.
and that
Tommy.
that
I
to
agree with
me
you.
is both of those things. In fact, I had to turn it off both times and like regroup before I turned it back on to watch it. Harvey Keitel was very violent to his wife, who it turns out he had a wife while he was dating her,
Right.
and he was scaring her, and she had to run away. That's toxic masculinity, when you have to run away from a man to protect yourself.
And what's toxic femininity?
When you are a femme fatale, a femme fatale is toxic femininity. I agree with you, James. I don't think we're blameless. There are women who use their feminine wiles to abuse and harass men. I don't like that. That's stupid, and I don't want to hang out with those women or even know them.
We never knew anyone like that, right, James?
Oh, I have no experience with that.
Exactly.
That Amber Heard is a toxic feminine.
feminist.
Yeah, I think so.
So there's no sympathy for her 100 death threats.
No, I'm not saying that there's no sympathy. I think it's horrible that people do that. I mean, she's got enough problems. Mostly her her own toxic personality. But there's no reason to say you're going to kill some. I mean, that's ridiculous. Either way, men or toward men or women.
I would say that if Amber Heard had 100 death threats, it would only be karma for what she's done over the past 10 years, and I'm surprised that it would only be.
No, I don't. I don't think that way. I don't think an eye for an eye. I don't believe in that. I believe that.
I'm not saying an eye for an eye. I'm saying
Well,
that.
no, you're saying that she did something bad, so she deserves something bad to happen to her. That's what else? That's eye for an eye.
I'm saying there's a certain gravity to your actions. For instance, here's a little bit of information most people do not know. When Amber Heard first made her first allegations against Johnny Depp, one of their friends, Doug Stanhope, a comedian who had spent literally weeks living with them at different times, put out an open letter to say, I have spent more time with these two people in a live-in situation than anybody I can think of. And I can tell you that Johnny is not abusive to Amber. And in fact, Amber is abusive to Johnny. Well, she sued him for millions of dollars, which is something that most people don't know. And one of the conditions of their divorce was that she dropped her lawsuit against Doug Stanhope because as a poor traveling comedian, he did not have the money to fight her slap lawsuit.
Right.
It was just a lawsuit. And one of the conditions of their divorce was that she dropped that case.
Well, I mean, he didn't, right. He would not have the money to fight that. It wouldn't even be to pay her if she won, which she probably wouldn't have. You have to be able to, I mean, okay, slander is if you're lying, right? What is the
Libel?
Right.
libel if you're
Lying
not.
about someone else. If
Li-
you're
libel is
slandering,
lying.
yeah, yeah.
Slander is saying something that you shouldn't, even though it's the truth. There's one that's
I think libel is, and I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
Isn't it incriminating someone? And slander is just saying something that isn't
yeah.
is false,
I don't
right?
I don't know, but I just know that
Yeah.
it would be really hard to prove that.
Yeah.
That was the case. But I don't like her. I don't like her. I mean, I guess that's part of the thing. She does not strike me as somebody that is trustworthy or reliable. And yes, I would put her in that category of toxic femininity.
Thank you. We keep agreeing on so many things.
We do agree sometimes, James.
Happens more and more regularly. It's strange. We're ruining our dynamic, Paula.
Oh, shit.
James, wasn't your character in Sweet Jesus an example of toxic masculinity?
Yes, actually, and James, I wanted you look a little bit like one of my best friends from when I was growing up, and his name was Al, which is what your name was, and I based that character on Al, and so you ended up playing Al because of that, because you reminded me of him for some reason, but
Because he's such a devil.
he was he had I loved him. He was my friend, but he was not good with women. I mean, he was a very charismatic guy. Women loved him for a little while, but he was an asshole with women.
The point is, that is a successful mating strategy for the male part of the equation, but an unsuccessful mating strategy for the female part of the equation.
I don't know about that. I think you lost me. All right.
Well, strategy quantity.
All right.
Female solid strategy is quality over time.
I'll have to think about that. Are you up to anything, Sal, these days?
Oh, I've been making short films for contests, and I've won a couple awards.
Oh, that's cool.
And yeah, I'm getting ready to shoot another feature.
Do you want to give us a sneak preview of your subject matter?
Oh yeah, it's the movie is tentatively called The Biggest Geek, and it's basically a big contest involving several geek type events, and it has dramatic subplots,
Okay.
and it revolves around the main family in my universe, who were the subject of our very first short film.
Oh, okay. Well, good luck with that. I know it's making a film is a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of organizing.
Are we ever going to see Sweet Jesus too?
Sweet Jesus, too. I don't know about that, but we have a couple ideas. We're just not. It's a lot. It's a lot of organization and a lot of work, and it's just not been the right time.
Wrangling the cats.
Yeah. So, what else is on your list, Richard?
I'd like to listen to the YouTube channel called the Institute of Arts and Ideas.
Okay.
Got some serious money backing that organization up.
Yeah?
I mean, they bring in scholars.
Cool.
They actually
to-
they actually bring them to a place and sell tickets, and then you can go to these different
Oh,
panel
wow.
discussions, and they have different topics.
Mm-hmm.
I thought this would be an interesting topic that people here could answer. All right,
All right.
which is more valuable? Poetry that deals with the sobering reality of life, or poetry that seeks to uncover deep truths about reality?
I'm glad you're asking that question directly, Richard, because I wanted to say it to you directly. I didn't want to write out an essay. What is a hidden truth? And if it's hidden, how do I know if it's been revealed? I mean, I don't understand the concept. Hidden truth. What is that? Because I don't think I've ever experienced a hidden. Nobody's ever shown me a hidden truth in my life.
I think the best thing I could do would be to share with you a poem that is attempting to
Okay.
reveal a hidden truth.
Okay. Before you do, I would say I've read poetry or experienced art that maybe would shine a light on something I was unaware of. Is that the same thing? Or I learned something that I didn't know before. I think it can do that.
It's easier with an example.
Okay.
The very famous poem, I think that I shall never see a poem as lovely as a tree.
Okay.
Do you know the poem?
I've heard it, but would you refresh my memory? It's not clear.
Didn't we all have to memorize that in grammar school?
I missed those. I missed those
No,
classes.
I know the poem, but I don't remember.
Yeah,
think I
by
skipped.
Joyce
Kilmer.
Kilmer.
Yeah,
I
it's
couldn't
all
pronounce
about
it, but
it's
yeah.
all about God and birds and nature and how you bond with nature.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
it's a relatively old-fashioned type of poem.
Where's the hidden truth in that, or allegedly?
That there is a God and that God is communicating with humans through nature, and that you are able to experience this wonderful transcendence.
I don't think that's a hidden truth as much as a belief.
Yeah.
It's what somebody says, hey, I believe there's a God and God expresses himself through nature. This is what I think, and I'm going to say that.
Well,
I don't think that's
Are there-
a truth. It's an opinion.
Okay, now that's an interesting distinction you make, because I think all truths are beliefs.
Oh, how no? Okay, maybe all. I mean, I'm thinking a priori truths here. When you say
There are such things,
when you say truth, like yes, we will all die.
which we know from
that's-
experience.
Right.
That's not a priori.
Well, I thought that's what.
A priori means you know it before you even experience it.
Oh, okay. I was misusing that.
We
then.
know people
Yeah, for
die.
example, all
but-
bachelors have never been married. You don't
Okay.
have to go in the world to find that out.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So the thing is, the truth. There are truths. There are truths that are solid, that we know are truth.
Tell me them.
Well, the fact that we are all going to die. This is a truth, right? This is truth.
Well, technically, what that sentence is we are all going to die because no one so far has lived forever.
Exactly.
Notice how I qualified it.
You qualified it,
Yeah.
and the chances are maybe sometime in the future
Exactly.
there may be, but up until now there has been no one.
Which puts it in the category of probably true.
No, I don't think so, because it's only probably true if you're taking in the future that we don't know.
Not as
Exactly.
humans are. Not as humans are now. There's nobody that's lived forever up to this point.
Correct.
So as we are, unless our species evolves
I mean, you can
into
talk
something
about
else.
Yeah, you can talk about the past, but you can't talk about the future because
Right.
nobody
'Cause
knows
so
the future.
an evolutionary chain, who knows?
Or the thing about
it-
putting your consciousness on a computer chip.
That's yeah.
that
Right.
kind of
Oh,
thing.
there's
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff that could happen.
That
Right.
never seems to turn out well in TV and movies.
Yeah, I don't know, but
But I don't think there are any truths that are not probable truths.
yeah, that just seems like hair splitting to me. I don't know.
Just so you know, I mean, this came up in the year 1900, and it's plagued us ever since.
Yeah, but that's like saying nothing is true, really.
No,
And that's
you would
kinda
never
di-
say that. It's a
that's-
self-defeating statement.
That's
Well,
It
okay.
means there's only one truth, that nothing is true. Wait, I thought you told me nothing was true. You just told me something that's true, that nothing is true.
I suppose if you're talking from a philosophical, does the chair really exist point of view, you have to you can split hairs that way. But I do think that that there are things that we can define as true. Maybe not true into the future, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
But there's, and I'm trying to think of something, something simple that we can use to discuss. But beliefs have to do with information that people put into your brain that you're making value judgments about. Nobody is born, left in a vacuum, and then has a belief system. The belief system might be, there are no other people on earth, I'm the only one, because there's but would you even be able to construct that without language? So there's a lot going on there, but your beliefs are what your parents teach you, what your society teaches you, what your friends tell you, but those are the deep-seated things that you've been told. Like, I went to Catholic school from kindergarten through the 12th grade. So if you think that math didn't include religion, you're wrong. It
Yeah.
does. So everything, and I had to deconstruct that when I got out of school in order to figure out for myself what I believed in.
one of the most thunderous epiphanies I ever had in my life about truth, I guess, the way we're talking about it, or probability or whatever. When I was a kid, 5 years old, I would say to my whole family, how do you know you're even here? How do you know that this isn't all a dream? Maybe it's all an illusion. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. My cousin walked up to me and he hit me so hard in the face, I was bleeding. It cut a
Wow.
scar on my face. I had a scar on my face for months after that. And he said, "Are you here now?"
Sounds,
And it was
sounds
this,
like quite a
this
philosopher,
sudden,
your
like, wow.
cousin.
It was like this Zen moment, like, yeah, I get your point. It was a very cruel lesson, but
Yeah.
I kind of got the idea.
Yeah, so
That could have still been a dream you were having.
Could be,
no,
yeah,
and
I
that's that
suppose
whole,
so.
am I a butterfly dreaming I'm a person, or am I a person
Yeah,
dreaming I'm a
yeah.
butterfly? I mean, that's been a age-old question, but
I don't think pain, that awareness that we're pain
Yeah,
is a
yeah.
real thing, and
Oh,
it,
So some people do. They do like poetry that talks about these beliefs, as you call them.
yeah.
And other people just prefer poetry that just describes life.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's no. I mean, it doesn't negate the value of either one.
Well,
It's-
that's
it's
why
just-
the purpose of the discussion is to state which one you prefer.
Okay.
And then state why you prefer it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that breathtaking moment, but I also like poems that talk about hanging clothes out on a line, or talk about mowing the lawn. If there's enough sensuality in that poem that gets me there, that's a great poem to me. But I really love those moments when somebody says something that you kind of knew, but you never heard it really said. There was just some kind of little intricate, not a truth. I don't think it's a truth. I think it's an observation that might be universal, or somewhat universal. That you can just take that little piece of something and just keep it in your pocket, and think, wow, that was really something. And it alters the way you think from then on. Once you have that epiphany, like you said, it will alter the way you think. It will color, not completely, but it'll color your thoughts from then on. And that's what a good book will do. It'll make you think in another way, or make you feel another way, and that will become part of your gray matter and your memories and in your dreams and everything.
Richard, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What's the motivation behind that question? Because what do you think it says about a person who chooses A or over B?
Just
Like it,
probably
somebody-
probably their history.
Yeah.
Why would some people like Ode to a Grecian Urn? Because they like hearing these grandiose ideas about the past and things like that, and other people would like more straightforward, direct poems.
Bukowski.
The dead are on television selling us cars and beer. The dead eat with the dead. The dead sleep with the dead. The dead dance with the dead. And the dead are getting deader. Do not scream at night, even if you feel like it. Get up and walk to the kitchen and sit there, sweating at 3 o'clock in the morning. Life experience, see?
Yes.
It's not attempting to tell you something
Well, it is
like
metaphoric,
like
though.
Osmandia.
It is metaphoric. The dead or the dancing with the dead and all that, or what? There's an assumption and a metaphor in that, because it's not the dead. Nobody's dead.
No, it's the people. It's the people who are.
Who he perceives as being dead because he doesn't like their values.
Ah, nice. Yes, different people with different values.
It's a matter of
That was-
perspective.
That was really well put.
They may
Thank
not
you.
consider themselves dead.
Yeah, no, they don't.
That-
I know that for a fact. Those people don't.
There's a
think-
line in War and Peace where Prince Andre says to Pierre, he says, Pierre, what I like about you, you're the only person I know who really seems alive. Everybody else is dead. And I think he meant the same thing.
It's like
that-
Zorba the Greek
yeah.
too.
Yeah, that's another character. Yeah.
The life force. But there are people who seem more alive than others.
This is true.
They've got that electricity or something going on.
Oh, there was an interesting article in the Atlantic, a poem called Masculinity.
Uh-huh.
And-
Toxic?
Well, you tell me. You tell me. Because the woman who wrote it said, I admired you when the car broke down. And you said, don't panic. And you went and lifted up the hood and you did something and it started running again. All right. And I admired you. And she lists all these different times when the man came to the rescue.
Yeah.
And she said, you were like the star in the sky that guided the wise men
Wow,
to the
yeah.
manger. And then she ends the poem by saying, indeed, being around you was comfortable. but I am well aware that my comfort comes at a cost. And it makes you wonder when you read the last line, like, what's she getting at?
Yeah.
You know?
What's
Like-
the price?
Yeah, like James Walker and I, we often talk about quid pro quo in relationships.
Yeah.
You do this for me, I do this for you.
Yeah.
Right? And what's she giving up in the process of getting all that comfort?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it depends on how he relates to her, I guess. Okay, we're not buzzing, but I see that we're at 0.
Yeah. So
So,
you got to say your goodbyes.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you so
Bye.
much for attending. Please come again.
Thank you for having us.
That was a good one, Paul.
Thanks.